current District 24 director. But many of you have known him as a seasoned competitor. And I know there was a great sigh of relief when Keith entered district leadership because those competitors knew they had several years when he would be competing several in contests. He's a pretty seasoned competitor and a very tough competitor. He's a 5-time district contest winner spanning over 26 years. His first win was in 1991 in the Fall District Conference in the humorous speech contest. Second one was 1997 in the Fall Conference as a humorous speech contest. For those who remember, that was the evening of the first snowstorm that shut down Omaha, the big ice storm of 91. Terrible. I remember that. Keith placed third in 1998 in the Region 4 humorous speech contest in Minneapolis. Keith took a break for competing for several years. Then he won the Tall Tales speech contest in 2014 in the spring conference and the evaluation contest in 2014 at the fall contest. He won Tall Tales contest in 2017. So he's been a tough competitor for all these years. He competed in the international speech contest over the years and has the third and second place trophies to show for it. And with the help of Dr. Dillip, and I'll definitely not going to pronounce, or I will mispronounce his last name, past international president and accredited speaker, and George Volz, who's right here at DTM, Keith helps form the competitive speakers group here in District 24. The group was formed to help District 24 speakers become more competitive in the international speech contest. When in 2019, the international speech contest went to the region quarterfinals, Eric Biba won the Region 4 international contest, went on to compete in the semifinals to represent District 24 and Region 4. And here to speak about the competitive speakers group now is Keith Jones, DTM. Here you go, Keith. Tell us all you know.
So thank you for that introduction, Cindy. And I think it was for Kathleen, because everybody else in this room has probably pretty much seen or heard or watched or competed against me. And yeah, Randy's one of those that we won't talk about all those contests that happened in the past, but yes. So therefore, competitive speakers group. And I think Cindy really said, Keith, could you speak on it? And that was about all I got. So I was like, okay, let's see if we can fill in the blanks as to what the competitive speakers group was. George Volz, I believe, George, when you were district director, you had approached Dr. Dillip at one of the conventions and said, hey, how can we be more competitive? Because we just can't seem to get anybody, into the semifinals or past the semifinals. It's like, how do we do that? And we've been working on that. And Dr. Dillip basically said, okay, fine, let's see if we can figure this out. And in fact, that is when we started using Zoom, was in 2017, before the pandemic. So therefore, we had almost 2 years worth of experience with Zoom before we ever had to use it in basically getting our groups together and this particular meeting tonight. Anyway, Dr. Dillip basically said, hey, you got to structure your speeches. You have to come up with basically a good introduction, a good opening, a good body of your speech, and a good conclusion, something that ties everything together, something that ties not only through the body of the speech, but also back to the opening statements that you made. And one of the things that even Cheryl Rouse talks about is the formation of your speech. If you're going to build a speech for a contest, you need some basic elements. And this is what we've been going over in competitive speakers group. One, you got to come up with a topic. That's the first thing you really need to do, is come up with a topic. Once you have your topic, then figure out what your theme or the purpose of your speech is. What is that purpose? Why are you giving this particular speech? And then your third step would be to do an introduction. What is a compelling opening to your particular purpose, topic? What are you going to speak about? Then work on the body of your speech. Things in the past basically were tell the story, make a point, tell the story, make a point, tell the story, make a point. Do it 3. And again, I don't know if that is really what's happening these days, because there's been an evolution of speech contests and what works and what doesn't work at the international level and in the international speech contest. But you need to put together the body of your speech. And basically here, when you're writing out a speech, write out anything that you can think about. It doesn't matter how many words or what it is, just write everything that comes to mind and get it down on paper so you can see it. Because if you can't see it, you can't manipulate it to make it work. And therefore you might miss things. So write down everything. You can go back later and trim it up and make it look better and everything else, but just write down everything that you think should be in the body of your speech. The next step would be basically to come up with a conclusion, something that ties back to your introduction, that basically is the tie that ties all of your speech together. Hopefully there's a thread through your speech and from the introduction through the body to the conclusion, so that your audience can follow through with what you're talking about. And after you put all of that together, at some point during that process, you'll come up with a title. A lot of people like to start with the title and then write a speech around that. Usually that's the hardest thing to do, because you're stuck with that title in your head and you keep referring back to it. And really, you should just be thinking about the topic, the theme or purpose. And once you get to the end of it, the title sometimes just comes to you, because then you're looking at the whole body of the work and you're being able to put a label on that, instead of starting with a label as a title and trying to wrap a speech around that particular title. So that's the basics. And this is really what we're working with a lot of people in the competitive speakers group. They have not done those basic things. Now, for those of us that remember, the CC manual, the competent communication manual, basically giving you those 10 speeches, is really where you learn the basics of all of this, putting your speech together. And if you take one speech and you run it through basically all 10 speeches, including that icebreaker, you will have a better speech by the time you get to the end of those 10 speeches for that CC manual. So don't throw away your CC manuals. In fact, last night I ran across 2 copies that I have never even touched. So I have fresh copies of the CC manuals sitting around here that I can always go back to. Yes, and Kathy, we can get you a copy, a virtual copy these days. We can get you a digital copy of the CC manual if you're looking for it. It's available. So therefore, one of the things that you can put into your speech, basically vocal variety, always need some type of vocal variety, put in the motions, put in the 5 senses. Look at your speech and see where you can put a label on each one of the 5 senses: the hearing, speaking, the sound. How does it feel? Can you touch things in your speech? Can you make the audience feel like they're touching something that you're working with? Basically, predicates: what you hear, what you see, what you feel. And there's a whole list of words. Just Google predicates and you'll get a whole sense of all the words that can be used that help you hear, see, and feel. There's a whole thing about dialogue, putting dialogue into your speech. You want to take a person into your speech so that they feel that they're standing beside you, not give a speech that says, well, I did this and I did that, and you're telling them the speech. You want to bring them into the speech so that they feel that they're a part of the speech. Now, there's all sorts of things. There's rhetorical devices that you can use through everything that you're doing. Echo, metaphors and similes, rhyme, rhythm, onomatopoeia. I love onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is all those words that sound like they are spelled, like drip, tick, tock. Words like that, if you have them in your speech, they actually bring more realism to your speech. They have a touch that really makes it important and also touches your audience more. Peripetia. Peripetia. I love peripetia. Peripetia is nothing more than the sudden reversal of fortune. You're leading the audience down a path and then you make a sudden turn that is unexpected. Peripetia. Parentheticals. Parentheticals in a speech basically is exposing a secret to the audience that nobody else is supposed to hear about. It's like putting parentheses around a particular item. Ryan Avery did a good job of this because he said, my wife has tattoos. And then he held up hands with like 3 of them. And so it was letting the audience in on a secret type thing. Perambulation. Perambulation is the ability to walk through your speech. Does the audience follow through your speech from the introduction to the conclusion without getting lost? That's sometimes a hard thing because a lot of people talk about a particular item in their introduction and they never touch it again. Or there's a certain part of your body of your speech that you go off on a tangent and you leave it, and people are stuck with that because you didn't resolve some type of an issue in your speech. And they sit there and they go, I can't get past this. So be careful that you can walk through your speech from the beginning to the end of it. Now, one of the things that we saw, especially I was able to go to Nashville and see the International Speech Contest in person, and also it was online. And the first place person did it on basically as he was standing on the stage. And his whole speech was a very simple thing. My name is. And basically that's it. That's all he talked about was NDE. NDE is a word in his language that he basically said, I am. And it's like, it was a so simple of a concept. He used examples and stuff, but it was a very simple theme to his speech. The second place person was online, and he was showed up on the big screens in the conference room, the auditorium thing that we were in. And his theme was nothing more than traditions. Traditions, family traditions. And that was his topic. That was his theme. Sometimes speakers get into the point where they have multiple themes going on in their speech and they have trouble tying them together, or they lose the audience because they've got more than one subject going. And therefore, it's something interesting that the two that won this year, I should say, were very simple speeches, very simple, very straightforward, easy to follow. And that's what we've tried to do with Competitive Speakers Group, is explain all of this in some shape or form so that people can be more competitive. Because if you look at speeches, go onto YouTube and say Toastmaster speeches, you can get a lot of them. And the majority of the time, they're struggling just with putting a simple opening, body, and a close together. Madam Toastmaster, thank you very much for this opportunity.